I'm Michael Lyons from moralinjuryinternational.com. Joining me today on the panel is Leo Quinlan in Ireland and Marty O'Connor in Melbourne. Our special guest is Will Kennedy, who joins us from Ireland. Will is the author of My Secret Life and talks openly of his struggle living as a gay man in his native Ireland. He is an Irish Army veteran of 21 years. Will Kennedy is a prominent HIV activist. He is open and out about his own sexuality and his HIV status. Will, you're very, very welcome to our program.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here today.
Okay, and as we said, our program is a Moral Injury International, and that's the focus of our program, is to draw attention to moral injury, which again is relatively new, I suppose, and can be confused with PTSD or other causes of why people would be suffering. But it's not a mental, or it's not a medical condition. And just as you said about betrayal, it also says moral injury occurs whenever a person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent an act of behavior that violates their own sense of morality. When you do something wrong, or you fail to prevent something wrong being done to somebody, and as you said, often then the betrayal comes into it, and that's a double whammy. Then, if you've got someone who's, as you said, a higher authority who you're betrayed by, which happens a lot from our talks to people who are first responders, they often mention that it's the higher authorities that really gets them in this position of having a moral injury. Sometimes it's not the fact they're burned out. So that's a very prominent part of a moral injury. So now you've been talking to our dear friend Marty down in Melbourne, so I'll hand it over to you, Marty.
Well, Will, it's a pleasure to have you on. I've spent some time with you. I admire you. I've read some of your book, not all of it, but I spent enough time with you to get enough of your book. And so going back to what Michael was saying is, and I'll use your words, not mine, so people needn't write in, you're a queer guy growing up in Ireland. Now, where did you come up with the name queer? Because that's not really acceptable in certain circumstances. But before you answer that, I'm controlling a double whammy. Tell us a little bit, like Michael asked, what was your life? Growing up as a young fella, where did it go from there? And I'm going to let you carry on. I want to give you as much airtime as possible.
Okay, where to begin? I was born in 1957, and the, shall we say, social climate in Ireland was way different to the way it is now, particularly for people like me. And I think I had a fairly okay life up until 5. It's really hard to say this, but up until 5, I seem to remember after 5 never really being happy. My last happy memory was a Christmas morning of 5 when we had snow that year, and I got this little trolley you could pull around and makings. But after that, it just all seemed to just became a struggle, because that was the first time that somebody had told me I was different. My father's not his fault. He's of a certain generation, like way older than me. Well, he's dead now. He came into the sitting room at home, and I'm sitting there playing with my sister and her toys and everything. Now, I had been out playing with my brothers. I found no difference in what I did. And he started roaring at me, why was I different? Why couldn't I be like my brothers? Why wasn't I like the rest of them? And when I heard that word for the first time, difference, it was only then the concept of difference, because to me, what I was doing was normal. I was quite, being with my sister, playing, being with things. So kind of, it began really, I know people might say it's very early, but it began at that age that I also was a kind of needy child. My father was illegitimate, and you can imagine, that time in Ireland, I mean, he was born in 1919. He had a tough life himself, and was an army man, so really wasn't very good at emotions or expressing feelings or anything. And I think because I knew I was kind of different, I always wanted to be told I was loved and hugged, and so it caused a clash with us from the very beginning. He just couldn't relate to me in that way, and I wanted that. So yeah, it was a difficult relationship all our life, but skipping forward a bit, it was around 10 that it really hit me that I was different, because I can speak openly here. Like, I think when you start to get interested in your friends, your male friends of that
Yeah.
age, are talking
Yeah.
about girls and everything,
Yeah.
I realized what they were saying about girls and things. I was thinking about them. I was like, confusion, like, is not the word for it, like, because as I said, it was, by then it was 1967 even, like, but there was no one to talk to. Today we have helplines, we have LBGT Ireland, we have a national LBGT helpline here, we have different groups, but there was no one, absolutely no one. I mean, I didn't even hear the word gay, heterosexual, none of it. And I think my first experience was I was sexually abused when I was 12 by a married man. And I was utterly confused because I enjoyed what was happening, but he had told me like it was a secret and we couldn't talk to anybody about it or anything. So I took myself off to confession. I laugh now, but I didn't at the time. And I'm confessing that I'm having sex with a married man. And I'm being told by this priest then that it was my fault, that a married man wouldn't be doing what he's doing unless I had something. I was like, you're 12. What do you do? And then you find out through things that happen that actually your condition is considered a mental illness as well. And your church says back then you were intrinsically evil. Now we're just intrinsically disordered, which is like, you know. So at 12, my concept and my idea of who I was that I was intrinsically evil. I was mentally ill, and it was a criminal offense as well. So this was my introduction to my sexuality, and it had a really, really bad effect on my life. And when we talk about moral injury and the betrayal, I feel that in Ireland at that time, the church and the society left not just people like me down, anybody who was marginalized and didn't fit in to their perfect way of life and everything. Like, we all know about the unmarried mothers in Ireland and the scandals in the homes and everything. And it was the same for queer people like myself. We were just utterly, they treated us like hell. So I think I tried to cope the best I could. And one of the ways I found a coping, even at a very early age, was alcohol. Believe it or not, even as a 12-year-old kid, I was able to get my hands on alcohol. And what alcohol did for me, I could act straight. I could pretend to fit in. And when you talk about moral injury, I became a consummate actor and liar from the age of 12 to fit into this society.
You were masking. You were masking it. Masking it.
Completely masking. And I call it like a consummate actor. And everything I did became stories. But the one thing about when you're lying like that, you think you're good, it's exhausting. You have so many balls in the air, and what did I say last, and who did I date, and you're bloody exhausted. So by the time I was 16, I was worn out even at then, like, from all of this. Like, so there was my first suicide attempt at 16. And the frightening thing about it was I couldn't get my hand on the real stuff that would work. Like, so I gathered together every kind of paracetamol, every tablet. I mean, lots of them. Like,
so we'll just to go back a little bit there. Why did you want to commit suicide? What was the reason? What triggered that?
I honestly felt that everything they had told me was true, and that I was actually a real evil person. I was a criminal because I was having sex now, even though my idea of sex was like, because of having been molested, my idea of sex was like, sex proved that somebody liked me. Yeah. And everything was based on sex, my acceptance, everything. Like, if somebody had sex with me, it could be abusive sex, but they liked me. And it was really crazy. And I was so, I used the word, fucked up in my head completely. And I saw no way out.
Will, can I ask you a question? During this period, we're talking about moral injury, did you feel in any way that in yourself you were doing something that was wrong? Or were you quite happy within?
I felt everything I was doing was wrong. I utterly believed that I was wrong. So and I believe the fact that I was lying
internally, your moral compass and your conscience was affected by this behavior. Would that be true?
Well, I hated the fact that I was lying, and I knew I was lying because I came from a very, I won't say strict Catholic because they never forced us or anything, but they had the Catholic beliefs of everything at the time. So I knew what sin was. I'd been to confession, I'd been through my communion, my confirmation, and I took all that on board and I believed it. So everything that I was taught was morally right, I was doing the opposite. I was lying, I was having sex, and I literally felt that because of the lying in particular, I just wasn't a good person. I really wasn't, like, and I didn't want to be doing that. If I had been able to do what I can do as I do today, talk openly and things would have been much different. But there was no avenue. There really wasn't, and I'm not exaggerating that. Like, there was no place, because every time, like reaching out to a doctor, the priest, talk to a guard or anything, I got the same response. Your fault, you're evil, you're bad, so I gave up. And that's why, Marty, I tried suicide, because I had tried everything else. And I really felt that no matter who I talk to, everybody is saying I am what I am and how I am. They must be right and I'm wrong. So there's no way out. And fortunately, it didn't work. But the horrible thing about when you try that as a young guy and you can't talk to anybody, because if you tell somebody why you're ill, the whole thing will open up and they'll start questioning why. I remember I got up the next morning, but if you imagine taking a load of pills and 3/4 of a bottle of vodka, not just a hangover, sick, puking, I was able to get to school, get through a week of illness and still not talk to anybody, still not be able to talk to anybody, and still carry on this person who I was, like, pretense. And that's why
you felt you had no value, really. That's, I suppose, that your life meant nothing. It wasn't valuable.
Absolutely nothing.
Can I bring Leo in here for a minute, please? Leo, you're sitting there. I can see through your eyes. You're watching intensely, listening.
Yeah. Well, it's quite harrowing what you're talking about, but you did situation. You mentioned the Gardaí, priests, etc. So you're coming on to what we consider to be the keystone of moral injury, i.e., the betrayal by higher authority, not being listened to, your story being denied, and you left to handle things by yourself at such an early age. So I was wondering if you would be a moral injury candidate before you ever came on here, but by God, you certainly are a moral injury candidate.
I told you that, Leo.
I know, but if it's not, if I can just take 30 seconds to put something in layman terms about moral injury, you're an ex-soldier, as I'm an ex-soldier, and Michael. And this whole moral injury thing came about when soldiers in the Congo suffered some traumatic experience, and then they killing people and seeing people being killed, and they came back and they were then betrayed by higher authority. And what happened to them when they came back, and I know them personally because I served with a lot of them. 5 of them committed suicide, maybe closer to 9. 2 ended up in mental homes, alcoholism, broken relationships, broken marriages, not being able to hold down jobs, etc., etc. Now, I'm not putting words in your mouth or anything like that, but as we continue with this podcast, if anything I just said triggered something in you, maybe you could tell us about it. That's it.
Yeah, well, I have to say, Leo, like yourself, I was wondering where I fitted in this moral injury, and then when I heard that and read it about betrayal by higher authorities, I felt, not just me, I felt a huge part of the Irish population were betrayed in the era I grew up in. And I think there's an awful lot of us suffering because of that, like, if we haven't done something about it. And the unfortunate thing about that period was people looking back would say, well, why didn't you do something? You literally couldn't. You literally did. I remember there was a doctor, he was a Minister for Health, and his name escapes me now, but he was trying to bring in the mother and baby scheme. And he had to go before a bishop in Dublin, and they had this big discussion about it, and he didn't want him to do it. And the guy ended up his whole career being destroyed. He had to move to England. The church had that much control because he wouldn't agree with the church. And what hope had I? You know, and but I'm kind of losing track now. Yeah, I was 16, and you see, remember, I really was. When I say a believing Catholic, I believed, but I also had this naive kind of attitude that if I gave my life to God, that I would be cured. Everything would happen, and that's where the priesthood kind of came about. But I was very reluctant, so I didn't do anything about it. I was a late vocation, as they call it. Well, they told me. I think I was 24. You know, I'm 66 now, remembering the exact
can we
dates.
continue on there, actually, just to go to that period in your life where you decided to join the priesthood or join the seminary to be a priest? Can you, why did that come about? Or why would you do that?
Well, as I was saying,
Who inspired you to do that?
it was extremely mixed up reasoning because of the way I was being treated. There's this kind of thing, like if you're being bullied, and you know, you join the bullies and start bullying others. you want to fit in. I think my biggest thing in life was to fit in, to find a box, a place where I fitted in society. And that was a big part of it, if I could, because there was two ways out for queer men back in my time, and women: the priesthood or marriage. Because when you reach about 18 or 19, people are questioning, you know, where's the girlfriends, where's this? And Jesus, you have to come up with so many stories. I mean, I did actually have a girlfriend, God help the poor girl, when I was 17 until I was, I think, 18. And that ended the night she asked me to get engaged. We were both drunk, and I told her what about myself, like, and her whole thing was, "Oh, I can cure you when we get married." I was like, "No, that's not going to happen." So fortunately, I didn't get married. But then, like, it was really getting, my brothers were all getting married at the time, my older brothers and everything, and the lies are no longer working. People are really questioning you. They're really wondering why, like, you're a young man, was not so. In a way, it was an escape. That's one of the reasons. It was an escape to get away from that situation. But also, I did honestly believe that I would take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and I'd get the gift of chastity, as it was, and this whole problem would disappear. But and that's why I applied. But I didn't want to be a priest here in Ireland, so I applied to a missionary order, and I would have ended up in Tanzania if I had gotten ordained. 7 years to get ordained. I did 4. And the
So
first year was okay.
What happened? Why did that not work out?
I was going to tell you now, the first year was grand, was okay, because you were, picture this, in the house. It was in Dublin, up in Dundrum. Palatine Fathers was the name of the order. And you were in the house, and you did not go out for the year. It was called your novitiate. You were reading Bible and really getting to know it. And I did 3 A levels just to pass the time, really. And in that year, everything was good because I didn't engage in any sexual activity. I didn't even know what was going on. I just was really head down and going to be the great priest and all this, like, and everything. And then in second year, we went to Milltown College in just outside Dundrum to do philosophy. And few problems rose. I walked into a room full of, I thought I was in a gay bar. I'm not gonna, I don't care, people can contradict this or not, like, but this is my memory. I walked into a place, like, and everybody was like, "Hey, girl," I was like, this is what I came to get away from. What am I doing, like, you know? And then I found out, yes, it wasn't blatant. It wasn't like some people have said salacious sex parties. It was all underground. I found out that we could, through different guys that I met, yeah, you could have sex, you could go on. So that really fecked up my head even more, like, because I thought, okay, I'm trying my best. We had a small chapel in our house, and I used to go down there every night on my own. Oh, it was around midnight when it was empty, and I would just lay out fully on the floor, like, and I would beg God to take this from me, beg him, like, you know, to just, please, I'm here, let me do what I want to do for you and take this away from me. But at the same time, I was having sex. So there was my moral compass. I completely off, like, you know. And this went on for about 2 years. But then I was beginning, as I was reading the Bible and doing philosophy, church should never send us, if you're going to send people like me to do philosophy, because we have questioning, inquiring minds. I'm always questioning. And in doing philosophy, I began to question the church's position by looking at other philosophers and stuff about what they said about us. So then I began to argue about sexuality, about poverty. I didn't believe that we took, even though we took about poverty, I didn't believe that we lived by it, because I'm working class and I was not used to, in 1 week, having 3 different dinner parties to celebrate the feast of the pigeon who dropped dead outside the front door of the mother house or something. Any excuse, they would have a party, like, you know, a big dinner party, wine, beer, the meal. And I was like, where's the poverty? All my moral compass.
Will, so just going a little bit there is, then you left, as in you didn't qualify as priest. You left the priesthood after 4 years. Then you what? I know your father was in the army, and then you went into the army. What got you to go into the army, and how did that go? Because you served 21 years, as Michael said.
Well, it was to do with the leaving of the priesthood, because in the last year, when I was really, really doubting and really questioning, like, that there was nothing wrong with me, it was actually them, and that I was behaving in all these ways because I was trying to fit in and everything. I remember the last night that I went to that chapel, and I was on the floor in my usual. I was actually crying at this stage and everything, like, and I just felt, I just didn't feel. I just knew there's nothing there. I'm talking to nothing. I'm 4 years doing this. I'm talking to nothing. I've got to go. Well, actually, they were asking me to go as well, in case they ever hear this. They were asking me to go at the time as well. Like, they felt that I was no longer a suitable candidate for to be a priest. So when I was 28 then, and
sorry. Will, just quickly there for listeners, why were you not suitable to be a priest? Was that because you were gay, or just not suited for the vocation?
To questioning. They have, I don't know if they do it now because I don't keep up with the Catholic Church, but they had a rule, blind obedience. And it was the first year my novice master said to me that in the mother house down in Thurles, when he was a novice himself, they had farms, like, you know, and you would be told, if you were told, you would be told, go out and plant this cabbage plant upside down. It will never grow. You don't question why, you just go out and do it. That's blind obedience. And because I was questioning and I was arguing and it just wasn't what you do, like, you know, if you're told to do something, you do it. And at that time, even though I was completely messed up, I was drinking all this time as well, like, because I'm giving away something here I probably never told anybody. I was put in charge. I was put in charge of the altar wine, the ordering of it, bringing it in and everything. So when I just get the supply of the altar wine in, oh God, I'm not a Catholic anymore, and I'm terrified I go to hell. I used to empty bottles of wine into containers. Then I'd half fill the bottle with water. I'd take the bottles, the full bottles. So I had my supply of alcohol all the time. Like, I was still drinking away, like, you know. And yeah, that like was, I don't know, this was your moral compass goes wrong. I was able to justify that to myself. I was able to say, like, you know.
So continue on then with the army bit. Why the army? That seems so much away from anything else that I possibly think you would join. Why did you join the army?
Comes down to fitting in and masculinity. All my life, there'll be a thread throughout my book for anybody who read. There's a thread in my life that went through it, looking for acceptance, looking to fit in, and that people would just accept me. And being, well, the word gay was used all then, like being gay, there's an awful kind of thing about gay men that we're all effeminate and screaming Nellies, and as we say, like, puffs, like we're not a bit, like, we're not men as such, like, you know. And I came from, as I said, my father was in the army, my brother was in the army. And one other thing I had a real interest in was being a chef. If the priesthood, like, actually, when I left the priesthood, I really, that was another suicide attempt when I left the priesthood, because I thought that was where my life was going. now I had no life because I had no other plans put in mind. And that didn't work. Obviously, I'm here. But when I got home, I was talking to my brother, and he told me that at the time in the army previous to this year, God, it was around 88. I could be wrong, could be 87. But to be a chef in the army, there was no formal training. Such actually, most of the chefs were rejects. We were told anyway. And you do something like a 3-day course. You go away for a weekend, you come back and you're cooking. But the army on that year that I wanted to join had started sending people to actually train in college. Do the 3-year, I did my London City and Guilds. And I thought, okay, I can join the army. I can prove to my father I'm a man, just like the rest of them. And I can come out as a qualified chef. Because my plan was to do the 3 years and leave. But when you sign up and you're getting free education, you have to give them more than 3 years, which I never looked at. You have to give them 9 years. And so I was there for 9 anyway, I thought. But it's, how could I really make people understand? If you're an outsider and feel you're an outsider, and everything around you is geared at a certain way men act, a certain way men behave, the army was a place I felt, yeah, I can prove myself. And in recruit training, because that's when I really did the only military stuff, I literally know I was pushed twice as hard as the rest of them, because I had not told nobody that I was gay. Like, I mean, I think I was saying to Marty the other day, all through my life I had a swinging door, as we call it, on the closet. I was drunk, I was out and partying and screaming. I was sober the next day, I was straight, like, and making up all stories about the girl I had been with the night before and everything. As I said, lying. And so when I joined the army, unfortunately, they were 2 months, for those who know the army, they were 2 months into recruit training when I got called to join this platoon. So they were already 2 months well fitter than me, like, and everything. And I was 30. They were taking them at that age, that time. And so I joined a platoon of guys, 17, 18. There was one other guy my age. And I coming out of the showers on the first night there, and I'm walking down to the billet, and I hear the platoon sergeant, who knew me from outside the army, telling lads to be careful because this guy was decatailing you in the showers. Like, so even though nobody openly said it, and I openly didn't say it, for the whole of my army career, from then on, it was suspicion about me, whether I was, whether I wasn't. But of course, all you had to do was start drinking with the lads.
But you actually did love the army, didn't you, in your time there? And tell us how you left the army after to do 21 years. You can't stay in there if you didn't like it.
It was kind of a love-hate thing.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked what I was doing. I really loved when I qualified as a chef and was able to do what I was doing. I would never have made a soldier, no disrespect to any soldier, because I'm not military. I used to be accused by officers of not respecting rank and everything, like, and arguing that. I used to argue that rank has to be, our respect has to be earned and all that. But once I got through recruit training and went off and did what I was doing, chef training up in Dublin. I liked that aspect, but because you couldn't be yourself, it wasn't just the army, couldn't be yourself. I was still lying. I mean, when I was up in Dublin and I'd go out at night with the lads and stuff, I always disappeared. 11 o'clock at night, I was gone somewhere. And then I would turn up the next morning back where we were, and I'd be telling them about the girl, who I was with, what I was. So I gained a reputation as a stud. One of the lads, like, as they say, was like complete and utter different to what I was. I mean, I think it changed me when I really began to enjoy the army, really be able to get to relax, was coming up to 1993, when we became legal in Ireland, when homosexuality became legal. I was in the last year, I stopped drinking in 94. I was in the last year of my alcoholism. And those 2 years, 93 and 94, it's a wonder I survived. I mean, I literally was drinking cans of beer before I went to work, emptying a can of Coke and work and filling it with Bacardi, walking around the kitchen all day, sipping this. I was a functioning alcoholic, I thought.
Yeah.
I was, like, for all those years, but those last 2 years, everybody knew. except me. I thought nobody knew. I thought I was doing a great cover up, like, and everything. I mean, I was locked up 3 times in work in the last 2 years of my drinking. And this is why I liked the army then. They gave me the option of a treatment center or go, like, and the treatment center I was going to was a 3-day week one. It wasn't like 90 days and thing. So, and to go to AA meetings. My plan was, say I was going to AA because nobody checks on that because it's anonymous. Nobody can inquire. I forgot that the treatment center, though, they were paying for the treatment center. So if I missed one day, they would report back to the barrack. So fortunately, I did that for the year. And that's when my life started turning around, really began to change. And I began to become who I was, because in that treatment center, they went to the core of the problems rather than looking at the symptoms. The core of the problem was my attitude to my sexuality and who I was.
William, could I, when I joined the army, there was 150 in our three platoons, which was 150 young men from 15 to 17. I never experienced anything. If I wouldn't even know what the word homosexuality meant, but so I didn't ever go through that period. But I'd like to bring Leo in here as a commandant who was overseeing a lot of things as to how during that period, when you were there, Leo, what could you like to just give us a brief on what the army's attitude was?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm about 12 years older than you. So I joined the army in 1962 as a cadet, and I went on for 25 years in the army. I left because of first year drums. Anyway, during my time in the army, we were aware of homosexuality, as it was called then. And I only twice met somebody who was, we call say, gay. One was one of my corporals, and he was a very fine man, great soldier. We had the suspicion about him. Nobody ever tackled him on it. I wouldn't allow it. He was in my battalion. He was treated with the greatest of respect because he was a very good soldier and a very nice person. He fitted in very well with the local community. Everybody liked him. He was just that type of person, and you just couldn't, just nobody ever wanted to harm him or in any way. There were whispers about him, but they were kind of kind whispers rather than malicious whispers, which in retrospect, I think it was very nice. You know, he wasn't harmed and he lived his life and still living. Then there was, in the west of Ireland, in a particular place in the west of Ireland, there was quite a lot of it in the army because it came from a certain region where it was fairly prevalent. And in my father's time, my father was in the army before me, he would tell me about court-martials where you had homosexual rapes. Also in my time in Athlone, I was aware of a homosexual rape in barracks in the Western Command in Longford, and that got a bit of publicity at the time within the army. So, but the thing was that if somebody was openly homosexual, and they would be asked to leave the army. And a friend of mine was in that category, and he was asked to leave the army. And we never knew it. Our class, we never knew it, that he was like that. So there was a lot of tragedy attached to people when they were found to be, like that. And I hate the way I'm even saying that, if you know what I mean. So let's say we were aware of it, but it wasn't in our face all the time. It popped up every now and again. So what you're describing to me now, have been describing to us in the last few minutes, is a lot more harrowing than I would have thought, or certainly I never experienced it or observed it. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation of my awareness of homosexuality in the army.
Yeah. So to keep going then, Will, at what period in the army, obviously you felt comfortable for 21 years, did you want to carry on in the army then, or why did you just want to leave it and want to leave?
as I said, in '93 in Ireland, homosexuality was decriminalised, and that meant you could not be fired. Like Leo had just said, you would be asked to leave before that. So in '93, you weren't, you could be open and out. But I mean, the thing is, people knew, just like Leo was saying, people knew I say queer, people knew it, like, but we didn't talk about it. We didn't do anything. But in '93, when it changed, I was 94, I started getting sober, and it was a revelation. But in 6 months, I was out. I was completely out within 6 months of my sobriety. Maybe it was too soon, because I tell you, when you're sober, don't make big changes. But I just had enough of my whole life. Like, I think I was 37, and I'd had more than enough. So I came out at work, and I was up in Consus Barrack in Cork. No, I was Ballincollig until it closed. And I became known as the gay chef. When you were going overseas, and platoons forming up and everything, there'd be a phone call to the kitchen, and they might remember my name, and suddenly say, "Oh, the gay fella." It's like, we began to talk more, like, but the funny thing is, nothing to do with the army or anything. It was society before '93 that caused people like me. And that's why my book is called My Secret Life. If you're living with a secret, no matter how nice people are and don't talk about it and treat you, you're the one who's suffering under that silence. You know that if you break that silence, you're gone. And some people might have loved their job more than me. For me, I had settled into, when you have an income and you're safe, but you might want to do other things, but you're afraid to take that next step, change your career. There was part of that, but I also was okay now that I was out, because I felt that it was funny, the attitude that maybe it's just the lads, the army thing like that. Oh, because there was involved civilians as well. When we were having a coffee break in the morning, like in the kitchen, we had at that time, we had civilians in the dining halls by now, and we had the chefs, and we'd sit down and we'd be talking about what you did the night before. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I went to the cinema, I went to no, how many orgies did you attend? What's that? You were having sex 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, is what they thought we did.
And
Like,
how did your family feel, Will, when you actually came out?
that's the
Especially because your
interesting
dad
thing.
and your brother was in the army. How did they feel when you
My
eventually?
brothers and stuff were fine, but my parents were of the generation where you just didn't talk about it.
Mm.
Anything that you didn't talk about was okay. My mother, God rest her, was a woman who did not like confrontation of any kind. So you could have a massive row about something. Nothing is settled in that row, but nobody spoke about it after. That was what you just carried on as if nothing had happened. So I never actually spoke to either of my parents about my sexuality, but they knew. I mean, I had a 10-year relationship with a guy. My mother knew well what that relationship was like. But when that broke up, strangely enough, if it had been a girlfriend of 10 years, oh, what happened? They didn't ask.
Yeah.
They were that afraid or awkward to talk about. They didn't know how to talk about the topic. But my brothers and everything are fine. When I came out, I mean, my coming out was, yeah, I came out in the army finally, and then I became also an LGBTQ activist. I started working as a volunteer with the Gay Men's Health Project here in Cork at the time, and doing lots of things, all within a very short period of time.
And Will, just
And
because we're going up close, we got about 15 minutes left. I just wanted to ask you quick questions there. A double whammy is you said as we spoke, when you were asked to leave the army, now you did have cancer while you're in the army, but then when you were asked, what was the official when you spoke to the person in charge, as in that you couldn't continue on staying on after your 21 years?
I could have stayed on. It was nothing to do with because this was to do with my HIV diagnosis.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. I was never out about my HIV diagnosis in the army. It was just too much hassle to handle. And I thought, I don't have to anyway, which you didn't under the law. But when I was in hospital with the cancer, my cancer was associated with HIV. And the medical director up in Consus Barrack at the time sent word to one of the best doctors in the army at the time, Mary Murphy, Commandant Mary Murphy. She came to see me in hospital and she said, well, this guy wants to talk to you when you come out because he thinks that you might have HIV. And I told her then, and she said, oh my God, I'm your doctor, like, for the last, since you, why haven't you told me? And I say, oh, Mary, it's just too much to deal with. I have to live with being the old puff in the army. Like, now I don't want to be the one. So he sat me down and he said, I could come back to work, but I could not come back as a chef. This is 2011. I could get a job. They'd put me in an office or something. And my questioning about that was, look, I go to hospital, I'm in hospital 5 months, I come back after my treatment and I'm in a different job. What are people going to say? What are they going to ask me? You're going to force me to come out with my HIV. That's what I'm going to have to do, And strange thing is, in public, I was out, but I never knew about it in the job. And so I decided, I went to a solicitor to question about this. And through the conversation, she said, well, you've decided anyway to leave, haven't you? You told me you're going to college. I wanted to get a degree finally. And I said, yeah. And she said, this is going to be long and involved because you're going to have to get him to say it's because of your HIV that you can't continue in your job as a chef. And he's not going to say that. So I just thought, do I want to take on that battle?
Well, when you became an activist, at that period then, did you feel a great sense of relief that you could come out and people could see it and you didn't really... that the strings had broken and you were free? Did you feel free?
Absolutely free. That's why I became an activist. My whole history of living in that secret affected how I dealt with my HIV. When I was diagnosed, I just thought, right, oh my God, I'm now going to have to go back. Because at this time I was openly out about being queer and everything. And I thought, no, do I just have to go back and live with another secret? So I thought, no, because I was enjoying and I knew what it is to be open, the relief that you're not walking around worried all the time that people are going to find out. And I didn't really, I can't say I didn't care. I knew the stigma attached to HIV, but I wanted to do something about that. And that's why I am a HIV activist now, because there's still a massive stigma around HIV in Ireland. And I just decided, yeah, I'm going to be open. And we founded our support group here in Cork, Positive Cork. ACT UP is a big thing that started in New York back in the 80s. We founded ACT UP Cork. I'm very involved. The book is the biggest step, but I'm involved in a big campaign at the moment to advertise where we are with HIV now, and the fact that I can't pass on my HIV with you equals you. Everything about it, let's go back to the moral injury. I no longer lie. I no longer pretend, but I also no longer seek acceptance from outside. I said at 60, I'm in therapy all my life. I said to the therapist when I was 60, I finally grown into my own skin.
I mean, you found closure within yourself. Would that be right? And with moral injury, that's what we've been talking about. Leo, can I bring you in there because I run out of time shortly? Leo, you're sitting there very intense there, and I've got questions there on your mind.
No, I tell you, I have 1,000 questions I could be asking Will, and 1,000 chats more. We're not going to cover everything in a few minutes. But basically, coming under the context of moral injury, you've been kind of hiding a lot of things in your life. You've been suffering in silence, and this is a typical moral injury result of moral injury, suffering in silence. And it's only when, let's say in your case, coming out, or when in other cases, when it suddenly becomes public, that there's a sense of closure, as Marty's referring to, a sense of understanding, a sense of relief or something. So am I correct in saying that you are at that stage of moral injury where you've got some kind of closure, some kind of comfort in your current situation? Am I reading it right?
Definitely. I have, the most important thing for me is I have fully accepted who I am, what I am. I've accepted the fact that there were things I did to cover up who I was, the lying, betraying friends, because of the situation. I'm not excusing them in any way, things that I have done, no excuse, but I look at the situation I was in. But today I can say with my hand on my heart, having fully accepted who I am, every bit of me, I think the sense of freedom that I walk around with, I have no worries of anybody. I've written the book. I have no worries what's going to be said or how I'm judged in that book, because people are going to make up their own minds and read things, because I know who I am and why I am who I am. My experiences, people have said to me, might ask you regrets or anything. I don't really, because my experiences have made me who I am. The bad, the good, particularly the bad, when you have to come over adversities, when you overcome them, they make you, they either kill you, unfortunately for some, or if you come through it and come out like those of us who do, I think we come out much more stronger, resilient, and I hope caring people. What drives me, even by writing that book, is I want people living with HIV today that I know come to our support group. There's 8,000 people in Ireland, and there's only a handful that are out. And
Well,
I listen to people.
I say that our favorite, probably slogan is "Don't suffer in silence," and we always ask people not to suffer in silence, to go and get help from the community or from wherever. And I think you, at the moment, are doing a magnificent in your position to encourage people not to suffer in silence about your sexuality or and all that. And I think that's very commendable. You seem to be, all through your life, you seem to mention you were proving things to your father. Was that a vein going through your life where you felt you had to prove to your father that you were all right, you're a man?
Yeah, strangely enough, I think definitely my dad, but I think as well, like just men in general. I would love men in general to realize like that. Queer men, we are men. I'm as masculine or fit. There are days I could be completely at, because they're concepts. There are days that I can be, as we call it in our community, I can be a big Nelly Puff. I could be screaming. I can get a bunch of us together. We always say like put a bunch of us together, and we're like, my God, it's like. So I get it, but for me, that whole thing, I don't worry about that anymore. And I wish sometimes that my dad was alive to see, like, I am. If you judge masculinity about coming through things, strength or anything, I think for me, I've shown that I can overcome, and it doesn't matter whether you're a big Nelly Puff or a fucking whatever. Masculinity is just so misunderstood that you have to be a certain way. Like, and I don't blame my father. My father grew up illegitimate in Ireland in the 20s and 30s, and his treatment of his life, which I didn't find out until he was dying. I took care of him with my sister the last year he was dying, and I got his story then. Like, and we never became loving father and son, but we became to an understanding. I knew why he was like he was like. A man who never would show affection.
Did you forgive him? Is that what you're saying? Like, you didn't get on well, but you actually forgave him in the end because you understood him.
The greatest thing is when you understand, because your parents are your parents when you're a kid. But when you get older and you find out they're just another human being, they have their own stories. And if you can find that out and understand that, you begin to, oh yeah, Jesus, he's just like myself, really. He had his own problems, and that's when you can forgive. I could never have forgiven when I didn't know why. I mean, I had slapped down fights with my father, not arguments, fist fights with my dad, like. And all of it was screaming inside, I want to tell you who I am. I want to tell you who I really am.
Well, we have to finish up, and I'd just like to also mention, if there's anybody listening who are triggered by what we're talking about or uncomfortable, that they do find some kind of comfort. And there's also a number which around Australia or Australasia, which is 131114, which is Lifeline. That's where people can contact you in Australia, just out of interest, 131114. But I'd just like to finish by saying it's been fantastic talking to you, and wish you well with your whatever you choose to do in the future. And I'm absolutely delighted that you've come to a place in your life that you haven't got all those pressures on, and you feel like you come across like you're free anyway. So that's nice. Yeah. So Marty, I'll hand it over to you.
Leo, I'll hand it over to you and I'll finish off.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure listening to you. Just one thing I'd like to say is we have interviewed many, many people who have and are still suffering from moral injury, just focusing again on moral injury. And they've come through a lot. But I could be wrong, Marty and Michael might correct me, but I think you were the first one that I could say anyway that you've come through it. You're out the other side, and now you're quite comfortable within yourself. We've many, many other people have suffered a lot and are still suffering from moral injury, but you seem to have beaten it. So my compliments to you, and hopefully we'll be able to chat again sometime.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Love to.
Thank you. Well, Will, all I can say is I got to know you. I feel like I've known you for years. You're a very honest man. You're going to be very inspiring, and whatever we can do to push how you speak out forward, and your book, especially My Secret Life, we'll put this up on the end of it. I would recommend anyone, whether you're queer as you say or not, or straight, just to read it. And keep up the good work. And it's a pleasure and an honor to know you. And thank you so much.
And thank you for getting in touch and having me on here. Like it's really great. The more we can reach out, because I think as Leo said, that's why I do. And I hope that you do what you do. It's for those people who are still suffering, that they realize there is a way out and there is a place where you can reach that. I just want to give them, but you can't. They have to do their own journey, but we can help them along the way.
Well, I think by you speaking out alone is perfect. So, guys, thank you. And listen to our audience. Thank you very much. And to listen to Will's podcast and all other podcasts, please go to moralinjuryinternational.com. And thank you for listening here in Australia and all over the world. And good night from now.